Welcome to episode 41 of the Talking Friars podcast. Today, I'm here with a special guest, Skip Schumaker, the San Diego Padres, associate manager to Jayce Tingler. He's joining us right now when the Padres were supposed to open up their series with the Atlanta Braves. That has been postponed. Yu Darvish on the mound tomorrow, scheduled. Thank you so much for joining, Skip.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
All right. So first off, I wanted to get to, regular Padres questions, but I have to ask, what was it like in the clubhouse when there was, still that uncertainty on Saturday night about if the shooter was inside or not? Obviously, the shooting outside the ballpark, but at that time, kind of what was that like in there?
Yeah, we didn't really know what was going on. Players and staff heard some sort of gunshots. Didn't really know if they're inside the stadium, outside the stadium. You kind of just saw people scrambling around, through as far as the fans were concerned. And, the first thing you think of, which is terrible, is you think of the mass shootings. And my wife and I were at the Vegas concert years ago when that shooting happened. Luckily, we got out of there because my son had a travel ball tournament. So we got out of there before it actually happened, a few hours before. But you just kind of, these things just creep in your mind, and they shouldn't, but that's just the reality of where we're at in the United States and in the world. It's just horrible. But so we didn't really know. We kind of got everybody inside, and then you realize that there's families in the stands. And so a couple players went out and got their families to bring them back in. Some fans followed us in and just kind of waited to hear what the next word was. And we heard it was outside the stadium, which was good. And then luckily no one died as of yet, as far as we've heard. So best case scenario so far. Yeah.
Was your family there?
So I had a cousin and a niece and an uncle there and her husband, but they were like in the upper deck.
Okay.
So they were there, but I didn't have a chance to get them because they got their own seats,
Mhm.
didn't go through me, and so they were way up top.
Okay. All right. Just get into the Padres now, where they stand right now. Obviously, going into this Atlanta series, they have 19 combined games, you guys, against the Dodgers and the Giants. So do you view that you guys have a pretty good chance of still taking this division?
I mean, that's the plan, right? I mean, I think that's probably the Dodgers plan and the Giants plan too.
Right.
So yeah, there's there's a long way to go. I was fortunate enough to win the World Series in 2011 with the Cardinals, and we are 10 games back in September. So you just never know. It's so early still. I know it sounds weird to say that 100 games in almost, but there's still a lot of games to play. And we're honestly, I know it's cliche, but we're taking it one game at a time and not looking too far ahead, because you do play those teams in September, but those won't mean anything unless you win these games in July and August. So we have a big month and a half, 2 months left, and it's going to be exciting in San Diego and San Francisco and in LA. So it'll be a lot of fun throughout the season.
Yeah. You mentioned playing in the World Series, winning a World Series with the Cardinals. How does that kind of benefit you? Do guys, ask you questions about playing in that atmosphere? How do you think that could help you in terms of, helping the coaching staff, some people that haven't been in that environment, and the players themselves?
Well, I think experience is valuable. We are lucky to have a staff that has a lot of World Series rings. You have Larry Rothschild, who has a few. You have Rod Barajas, who has a couple, or one at least with Arizona. I have two with St. Louis. Eric Hosmer has one. So there's a player that has one. So, there's guys that have been to the World Series like Machado, but haven't won it. So there is a lot of playoff experience in that clubhouse, which we're lucky. So you do, players will lean on you. If it gets to that point, hopefully it does get to that point. There's no reason to lean on those guys yet, because we have a long way to go before that happens. But getting that taste of some playoffs last year for the young guys is beneficial. And so whenever you can get a little bit of taste, the nerves, I mean, they don't completely calm down, but the more experience you have in the playoffs, the better. And I think you can lean on people with experience. Sure. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Could you take me behind the scenes of Fernando Tatis Jr. and any player's routine for that matter, kind of leading up to the game? Because, there's people watching and listening that kind of just marvel at what that guy can do, what guys like Manny can do, just anyone on the roster, kind of what their pregame routine is?
Yeah, I think everybody's different. So you kind of find that's what the minor leagues are for, and college and high school, whatever. You kind of figure out what your routine, the best way to get prepared is. And so I think everybody's different. So Manny's going to be different than Fernando and Hosmer, and the starting pitcher is going to be different. So I think everyone's different. I think the majority of the guys, including Fernando, they get there around, if it's a home game, they get there around 1:30 or 2 o'clock. They make sure they get their body right, which is, training room, weight room, that type of stuff, make sure their body feels good. Then we get a hitters meeting. So you go over the starting pitcher that night and the whole bullpen, and kind of go over defensive positioning and kind of get your mind right in that side of it, the mental side of it. And after that, you kind of go through your progression of leading up to the game. I think what you don't want is to extend yourself pregame, or unless you're really working on something, but you kind of want to ramp up so you're peaking at the start of the game at a 7 o'clock game. And so he does, if we're talking Fernando or Manny, they're doing their soft toss and their left-handed pitching, their right-handed pitching, and then their machine work off the machine, and then their ground ball defensive work. Come back in around 6:15, kind of rest a little bit, and then then they kind of ramp back up to the game. And so I think everyone is different. There's not just like one way to do something. But at the end of the day, are you prepared tonight to win the game? And I would check that box on every one of our guys, which is really nice. Then they know what it takes to prepare their mind and their bodies, and so we trust them.
Moving to Eric Hosmer. Hos is, taking a beating from fans this year. But could you kind of just describe kind of the same question before, just describe his work ethic, whether that's in the cage, just pregame work, studying pitchers, for every night. Just could you give me a sense of how hard he works just to, because I'm a big believer in Hosmer. Obviously, I know you guys are. We've seen what he can do. Just kind of go through his pregame, how much he works.
Yeah, I mean, Hosmer's a World Series champion, Gold Glover, Silver Slugger. He's got a lot of awards next to his name. So I don't know what the fans think. That doesn't really bother me as much, because I do know kind of player we have. He's the leader in our clubhouse. One of the leaders, no doubt about it, if not the leader. People go to him for just about everything. That the respect that Eric Hosmer has in that clubhouse is second to none. And a guy that we can trust in big spots. And you talk about a scoring position, big spot in the game. There's a couple guys that you want up in our lineup, and Eric Hosmer is one of them. So he has made a significant, pretty good swing adjustment, which is tough to do middle of the season. Guys can make swing adjustments in the off season and tinker, and you have 4 months to work on it. When you're in the thick of things and you're in the jungle, it's tough to make that adjustment. And to his credit, he worked through it, had a tough couple of weeks, which everybody does in the major leagues. You're not just 6 months of fire. Like maybe Fernando is probably the only one that's like that. Everyone else has some peaks and some valleys, but at the end of the day, you've seen what Eric's July has been, and I'm thinking that it's going to continue to keep creeping up. And so his work ethic is as good as anyone's. I mean, his body is right, his mind is right. The defensive work is every day he's out there. The offensive work, he's working on left-handed, right-handed machine work. So if the only thing that the coaches would have a problem with is if someone isn't prepared and slacking off. And I can tell you right now that that's never happened one time in the 4 years now that Eric has been here. And so guys look up to him, the young kids, and he's a really good leader to follow.
Could you briefly go over that swing adjustment that Hos has made here?
Yeah, I think he would probably be a better for that, but I can tell you that it's just shorter, short, more compact swing. He feels he can get to any ball, any speed of ball, any wrinkle in it, any slider, whatever it is. It's just a more compact, direct swing. And so when you have shorter, tighter moves, less movement is less room for air. The more movement you have, the more room you have for air. And So I think he's just shrinked up, kind of stopped some bigger movements, and the proof is in the pudding because he is. It looks really good, and he's one of the most dangerous hitters in our lineup right now.
Yep, hitting over 400 in the month of July. Moving to kind of you and the coaching staff's planning. What is that planning like pregame, whether that's, you, Jace, Larry, the front office, just with lineups or pinch hitting situations when, a certain reliever would come in if, pinch hitter X is coming up to the plate, just kind of what are those pregame kind of meetings like?
Yeah, every coach has a role, right? And you trust that they're owning and they're dominating their area. So you trust that Curb's got his outfield in check. You trust that Bobby's got the infield in check, and Larry and Fritzy have the bullpen guys and the starting pitchers in check. And so everybody kind of owns their area. And once you scout the other team and then find out what your strengths and weaknesses you have to work on that day or that week, whatever it is, you focus on those two things leading up to a series. So you're focusing on your guys and how to get them better every single day. And then you're focusing on the other team on how to expose maybe some of their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So, my job is to, get all the information from either the front office scouts or, some maybe Eric Hosmer's played against a guy and he has something. So I kind of collect all the information just like every other coach. We put it together. We have a team meeting before each series, and we want to present it to the players, dummy it down as easy as we can. So what people don't understand is how much information is given to them. Oh, by the way, you got to hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, and he's got a good sinker, and it cuts, and you got a good curveball. Oh, wait, he has a changeup and a split. So like, there's a lot of information. So I've never really met a dumb big leaguer. That's the honest truth, like a veteran major leaguer, because there's so much information, and how can we dummy it down to them so they can best prepare and have the most success on the field. And so there's a lot that goes into it. Nothing is scripted. So you have a plan going into the game, but there's not just like, oh, hey, in the sixth inning, Grady's going to pinch hit against whoever. That's just, it never happens that way. You have an idea, and then you kind of make adjustments, as you watch the game.
And let's say, so tonight, obviously it was postponed, but were, hitters, were they given, their tablet or whatever, they were given a bunch of video of Mueller tonight, who was supposed to be tonight's starter? Is that the way that kind of works?
Yeah. I mean, every team has, where, we had Darvish going, and I'm sure they had a game plan to Atlanta going with Darvish, what to look for, what not to look for, his strengths and weaknesses. And so we had the same thing with Mueller, and a lot of guys have seen him maybe a little bit in the minor leagues. We haven't seen him at the big league level yet, in the Padres at least. But there has been some guys that faced him in the minor leagues, so they could share, maybe what they saw in the team meeting. And then we go from there. But I think for the most part is, you're sticking to your strengths. You're not trying to hit his strengths all the time. You have to, also try to figure out what your strengths are, and kind of wait for that, and try to expose him that way.
What's your relationship like with Jace? Obviously when you're on TV, or when I see on your TV, you're always, talking with him, having conversations with him mid-game. Can you just kind of go over what your relationship with him is like, and kind of what your role is? Is it just assisting him, mid-game or stuff like that? Obviously you have a full role, pre-game, post-game, stuff like that, but just your role in the game with Jace, kind of what's your role there?
Yeah. First, I was lucky that he hired me in this role, and could trust me to kind of be his wingman, and in a very important time in San Diego, right? I mean, this is these last two seasons have been pretty fun and pretty special, and for the organization and the franchise. And so I'm very lucky that he decided to pick me to stand next to him during every game. So as a bench coach, you just kind of give him option A and option B. And kind of, because there's so much that goes on the game. During the game, it can speed up. There's a lot of, pitching moves and offensive moves. And there's an injury that could happen. What would you do? A pinch hitting? Well, what if this happens, if a guy gets in trouble? So you're always just kind of communicating, kind of just in case stuff, throwing ideas out there. And some ideas that I have are great. Some ideas I have not so good. So But at the end of the day, he's the manager, and he's the one that's going to have to talk to you guys and the media and whoever it is, because he's going to make the ultimate decision. And he's the one that's going to take out the pitcher. He's the one that's going to decide who the pinch hitter is. I'm just giving options. Larry Rothschild just kind of giving options of, hey, this is what we would do. What do you know? But this is A and this is B. What's your gut tell you? And then ultimately he's going to make the decision. So the role is really covering blind spots, and that's the best way I can describe it. Whether it's in the clubhouse, in the weight room, in the training room, there's so much that goes on during a day with the 26-man roster and the call-ups and everything else that managers need help. And so however we can help him the most, especially myself, is what I'm trying to do.
Mhm. You mentioned the weight room. I'm curious, do guys, during the season, they'll come in, you mentioned, all the pregame work, slowly ramping up to the game, but obviously they're there much earlier on like a 7:10 start at home. What is their kind of workout, schedule like? I'm sure it varies for each player, but is it just keeping your body, healthy for the game? It's not a whole lot of, muscle building, that's usually for the off season, right?
Yeah, there's not much muscle building. It's just a very unique sport, right? With
Right.
162 with the spring training and then hopefully a postseason. So there's not really the muscle building. What I will say is you try to do the best you can to keep what you had in December and January, right? You're getting as strong as you can. And how many times have you heard, oh man, best shape I ever had, best shape I've ever been in my life, right? That's
Right.
the most cliche thing in spring training. Everybody that comes in, best shape I've ever been in. Well, how do you stay that way in July and August? And really, when you want to peak, if you're getting into the playoffs, keeping kind of that way, maybe losing 5% of your strength into September and October. And I think that's the challenge. And, luckily we have a really good strength and conditioning group that is, on it every day and, weighing in and taking body fat and doing all that stuff to make sure that the guys are keeping up, with their strength. And, some guys are different. Some guys like lifting a ton of weight. Starting pitchers generally lift a lot of weight because they have those 4 days in between. But most of the position players try to just keep as consistent with a routine as possible. And with the travel and everything on the road, that's a challenge. And time changes and whatever, rain delays like we have today, it's a challenge. But for the most part, you try to keep as much strength as you can so you can still be peaking by the time you hit the postseason.
Mm-hmm. Last one here about you. You've interviewed with a few teams, including the Mets that I saw last offseason, if I'm correct, or before Rojas was hired. Could you just detail what that process kind of entailed for you with the teams that you did interview with? And are you still interested in managing for a team in the future?
Yeah, it was a great experience. And again, we talked about experience earlier in the podcast, and you just kind of build on experience. And looking back on it, and I told this to my wife a couple, maybe actually during this off season, I'm lucky I didn't get the Mets position because I wasn't ready, and I needed to be in the seat I am now to kind of watch the game and navigate through a game like I was a manager. And if I was going to manage, how would I do certain things? Inside the clubhouse and relationships with the players and staff, and then navigating through a game. And so I really needed to be in this seat as a bench coach or associate manager the last 2 years because I've learned a lot. And I'm glad I didn't get the time you want to get it, right? You're interviewing for a reason and you want to get the job, but there's a reason for everything. And looking back on it, I would have been it probably wouldn't have went well, to be honest with you. So I'm very glad that I got to be in this role first, and who knows what's going to happen. Do I want to manage? I think I love it in San Diego. I'll tell you that. And I live an hour away from the Padres stadium. I live in Orange County. I commute every day, and not a lot of coaches get to live at home and have their kids go in the same school. And my wife is with her friends, and so there's a lot of benefits for me selfishly in San Diego, and just lucky that AJ Preller has kept me on since 2016, a part of the staff. And so I'm not looking to go anywhere. I've taken interviews, but I really, really am enjoying my time in San Diego.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Skip, for taking some time Obviously, this game should have been happening right now, but definitely appreciate your time here on the Talking Friars podcast.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
No problem.